excited today then to be speaking to Mr. Steve Rowe, who is a legend within the martial arts. He has a rich and varied history in a plethora of different martial arts. He's a ninth degree black belt in karate, ninth degree black belt in Tai Chi. He's coached hundreds of people in Tai Chi. He has 50 years in all sorts of Buddhism, Taoism, meditation, experiences, things like that I'm sure we'll get into. He's written for Combat Magazine. He's written for Martial Arts Illustrated. And I think pretty much every single guest that I've spoken to so far for this podcast has also mentioned Steve. So it's good to get him on, and we'll have a fantastic chat, I'm sure. Hey, Steve, how are we doing?
I'm all right, thank you.
Perfect. We always go straight back to the start then, Steve, if that's all right, about how you got started in the martial arts and why, and then we can go from there and deep dive your rich history.
It was my brother that started actually in the 1960s, and by the very early 70s, I had spent a few years in the London Fire Brigade, and I left that to go into security work. Mm-hmm. And when I did that, I thought it would be a good idea to join karate. So I think it was around about 71, something like that, I went along to my first club. And it was, to be honest, it was a very violent club, but it suited me at the time because of the work I was doing. So I trained with them for quite some time when David Carradine came along on the Kung Fu television series.
Sure.
I'd been brought up in a sort of South London council estate type environment. I'd never got on at school. I barely went to school, didn't pass any exams. My family thought I was stupid. My school thought I was stupid. I thought I was stupid, which was how I kind of went through the fire brigade to security type work, really. So I guess I'd been in I wouldn't say a violent upbringing, but I had a lot of that kind of stuff around me. And therefore, when David Carradine came onto the TV with all the Buddhist stuff and the Shaolin Temple, I kind of realised that if I carried on the way I was, I'd probably end up in prison or doing something really stupid. And that the whole Shaolin Temple thing just clicked with me. And that started me studying Tai Chi, Buddhism, Taoism, and anything to do with the kind of spiritual or Chi Ki type thing, really. After I've been doing karate for quite some time, I got up to about second dan.
Yeah.
My instructor left. It was a long distance lorry. He was an ex-army boxer, which was why it was quite a violent club, I think.
Right.
But he left to go abroad and left his clubs with me. And at the same time, my local residents association had asked me to teach some kids. Then I realised I needed some legitimacy. And luckily, just at that time was when Toru Takemizawa founded Terra Karate Kai, which was the first multi-style group. And coming from very kind of vague lineages, the club had originally been part of the John Alexander Zazen group, but we broke away from them years before. So that gave me some legitimacy.
Sure.
And I thought I'd retake my second dan with Toru, and I failed it. And when I said to Toru, what have I got to do? I mean, if you can bear in mind doing the kind of work I was doing a lot of gym work. I was quite strong and muscular and violent and so on, really. But he said, you're trying to use a sledgehammer to crush a grape.
Right.
I said, what have I got to do? What have I got to do for that? And he said, take private lessons with me. I was living in Kent. He was in Birmingham, but every week I used to drive to Birmingham for a 2-hour private lesson with him. That went on for years and years until he had a lot of trouble up there, and I moved him down to Kent and to be part of my clubs as well.
Okay.
So that's kind of my start in karate and Tai Chi.
Yeah.
From there, I also wanted to study. I was studying Buddhism and Zen, and I thought Iaido would be a good thing to add because it was weapons and it was a Zen art as well. So I actually wrote a letter to Okumitsu Fuji, and explained what I wanted to do, and he got me to come and start taking private lessons with him. So I used to go to Dartford every Tuesday to the Irishman's Club and take a 2-hour private lesson with him.
Amazing.
So that was kind of how I got started, anyway.
There's a lot to unpack there. So the fire brigade,
Mm.
what was your experience like working with the London Fire Brigade then?
Uh, Not a lot to say, really. Everything you'd expect from a fireman.
Did you enjoy
We
it?
we were a very yeah, we were a very busy station,
Yeah.
and which meant that we got lots of shouts or calls out, and so I was only in for about 3 years, but I
Okay.
got quite a bit of experience in that time.
Yeah.
I think the only thing I didn't like was in those days it was very military. I mean, we're talking 1969
Right.
to 71, so it was very military, and I didn't really like all the bullshit that went with that. But I love doing shouts. They were all good fun.
And then from there, you then moved into security work. Was that quite a natural step up for
Mm.
you, or what made you kind of
Yeah,
shift in that direction?
yeah. Well, while I was in the fire brigade, I actually bought a shop, and I thought, well, okay, I'll leave the fire brigade and run the shop. But it was only a small shop. But I got food poisoning. I was really ill, and I had to close the shop up.
Right.
And then I was looking around for something to do, really, a job.
Yeah.
So my father had been in the prison service, so I was used to that kind of environment. So I took to security quite well.
Perfect. Yeah. And you said you were quite a hands-on kind of violent guy at that point. Do you think that was due to upbringing? Do you think that was
Yeah,
due to your
I,
personality type,
yeah,
or
yeah. Sorry, you're breaking up. I didn't quite get the
sorry? Do you
question
think?
there.
Yeah. Do you think that was due to your personality type? Do you think it was due to your upbringing, your experiences?
Yes, I was considered to be stupid, ignorant. I bunked off school most of the time. I ran with all the South London street gangs at the
Right.
time, really. I It was the kind of upbringing that I'd had. I didn't realise. I mean, it was not until the David Carradine thing came along,
Mm.
and my first Tai Chi teacher in the 70s was a guy called Simon Wyatt, and he was very good. I used to go in early to push hands with him because I did karate. I think he quite liked to kind of work his stuff with me as well.
Yeah.
And he gave me my first copy of the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu, and I'd never read a book in my life. And at that time, but I opened that book and everything, I don't know, it's just like a kind of, I would say sudden enlightenment, but I could understand the Tao Te Ching. It really appealed to my kind of mindset.
Okay.
Uh, Years later, I took an IQ test, and I've got a very high IQ. I'm in the top 1%, but I couldn't learn in the way that they tried to teach us at school. And even now, if I don't like something, I can't really learn it.
Yeah. Just done. Yeah. Perfect. So that kind of linked in with the martial arts then. So you got kind of fixated, would you say, on martial arts? You went very heavily into it straight away?
Yeah, yeah. It was the one thing. I suppose I could quite honestly say, as a child, I was very unhappy.
Mm.
As a teenager, I did all this stupid stuff. By the time um, I got older, I kind of realised that yeah, I had to take a different course. And karate helped to satisfy the kind of, I suppose, the violent side of me, the fight. And the club I was in was a very, like, we did about 2 minutes kata and then sparred for the rest of
Right, okay,
the
yeah.
time. And they were like 3 hour sessions, and we used to beat the living shit out of each other for 3 hours. I was endlessly in the hospital. I broke my nose 5 times,
Right.
teeth knocked out, cracked, loads and loads of um, injuries. But I realised that I was on a course that wasn't going to be very healthy for me.
Mm. You've obviously studied lots of different things, so it's kind of the yin and the yang. Yeah, you had the very, very violent side of the karate, which was, as you say, the 70s karate, which was, everything. Bob
Mm,
Breen talks about it: groin kicks, do what you want, takedowns, punches, broken nose, etc. Then you have the Tai Chi, which is, the very kind of peaceful art, I suppose, to it. How did you reconcile those two? Was it something that specifically you looked for? Did you want to balance it out, or did you just happen to find the Tai Chi and kind of go, yeah, all right, that fits in with me as well?
I think I'm not really a thinker, I'm a doer, so I
Right. Yeah,
it would seem like I cleverly planned my martial arts life, but I didn't. I looked at something and just thought, oh, I like that. I'll try that. I'd seen David Carradine and the Shaolin Temple, and that had kind of pricked something inside of me. And thankfully, it did because it was life changing for me. The Simon was he was one of those guys who couch surfed. He carried all his belongings on his back. He wore Jesus sandals, long hair at the time, very
yeah,
hippie at the time.
sure.
But I got on with him fine. And like I say, when I got to the Tao Te Ching, there was something in there that really caught me.
Mm,
And that started me from Taoism to going to Buddhist temples to study Buddhism, Zen. I studied Wicca. I studied spiritualism. Uh, Anything you could think of to do with energy and anything to do with the internal side of the arts. And of course, as time has changed, I mean, eventually I went to Jim Uglow for Tai Chi. I was in Norway and everyone kept saying to me, have you met Jim Uglow? And I was like, no, I've never met him. So when I got back to England, I went to visit him and I got on with Jim like a house on fire, which started me taking private lessons with him as well. So I took 10 years of private lessons with Jim. And of course, Jim comes from a Hung Gar background as well. So there was a very combative side to Tai Chi there as well. And he took me to Hong Kong to train with Mary Yang. And I went to Hong Kong for kind of a week's private lessons at a time. I don't know for about, I can't never remember whether it's 7 or 9 times, but
right.
about that many times. And I got a lot from her as well.
What was your experience like training in Hong Kong then, and learning the Tai Chi from there?
Hong Kong, I hated.
Oh, really?
as a as a city.
Yeah.
Um, it was too hot. It was too muggy. It was too crowded. Um, so I didn't really like it. To be honest, I mean, I was lucky by that time I was old enough that I didn't have to stay with the other guys. They'd share hotel rooms and that. I'd go and stay in a different hotel in my own room kind of
Sure.
thing. And where they all went out every night and enjoyed whatever you enjoyed Hong Kong, I kind of stayed in my room. It wasn't for me.
Right.
Um, so I hated Hong Kong. Didn't do anything to do with Hong Kong while I was there. I only went to train with Mary. And even when Jim was saying to me, oh, let's go and train with this person or that person, I was like, I'm here to train with Mary. And I focused on that. She was an amazing coach is all I can say, really. So I really enjoyed my time learning from her.
What was it about her then that you wanted specifically to learn? If you're saying there was other opportunities to train with other people, why was it that you kind of honed in on that specific person?
I think it's because she was an extremely good coach. I, I mean, you could say severe, but not severe in a painful way.
Right.
She was quite a kind of disciplined person, but um, I, I just I got on with her. I got on with her teaching, and I really did get a lot from it. And so I found that really helpful, really useful. If my legs hadn't kind of given out, I'd have kept going back there forever, I think.
Sure. Do you think then that, or at this point in time, was your focus on the internal side of it, was on the external side of it? How much did you kind of put onto the self protection, the practical side, as or
Mm.
mainly the health benefit side of it? How did you kind of balance those two? Was it a 50-50 thing? Was it an 80-20? Was it 60-40, etc.?
Yeah, for about 45 years, I mean, I worked in the security trade. I can't remember. I stopped in 83.
Okay.
By that time, I was an operations manager running a security company. And I had been teaching in those days self-defense. I used to teach self-defense to security officers, powers of arrest, search, questioning, the ability to defend yourself. I was teaching police, particularly police in places like Czech Republic and so on, presidents, bodyguards over there. I taught self-defense to doctors, nurses, football pools collectors, if you can remember them,
Right.
insurance collectors, anyone that carried money, milkmen, doctors on call, midwives. So, I did endless kind
Everyone
of
and anyone.
self-defense
Yeah.
work. Yeah, and particularly when I went full time in the martial arts in 1983, and you couldn't really earn a living as such in martial arts, but I did go around doing all these self defense work and courses. So I'd say the self defense side was a very big part of my life, but it's not something I like to focus on these days so much. But what happened in the end, I think when you're talking about internal and external, I don't see any difference. I mean,
Great.
we've all got an internal and an external.
Yeah.
And, if somebody says, what's the balance, or do you do internal or external arts? My answer is we've got an inside and an outside. If you say that you're doing internal, you're lacking on the external. If you say you're doing external, you're lacking on the internal. I mean,
Sure.
you've got to train your breathing, your posture, your mind, your relaxation, whatever art you're training in. If you don't, then you would be lacking.
Hmm.
From a self-defense point of view, I'd say that Tai Chi is probably the best art I've ever done for self-defense, without a shadow of a doubt. And it's what I've taught most to bodyguards and police. And I think a lot of that will revolve around, first of all, there's the soft side of self-defense. If you're not emotionally intelligent, if you can't deal and cope with stupid people, if you're going to lose your temper, if you're going to try and have an ego and prove something to yourself,
Yeah.
you will end up in prison. So, the internal side, so even the meditation, the balance of emotional intelligence, to be able to not be nervous or anxious or scared, or at least to be able to control it sufficiently. They're all important parts. And even from a self-defense point of view, particularly if you're working in the security trade, you cannot be seen to just go and gob someone. You just can't do it. You can't even have a
Yeah.
straightener. You know what I mean? It's well,
Yeah. Yeah.
you could in the old days, but you certainly can't now. And so, therefore, the right kind of control, and also, a lot of people go on about preemptive striking. You can't use that either. However, Tai Chi is a very good thing, that with all the push hands and so on that we do, it's stand up grappling, really. So the
Mm.
moment that somebody throws or gives you an arm or a leg or something, you can take it from there because they made the first attack, and you can negate them rather than having to punish them.
Do you think Tai Chi is misrepresented, or do you think that it's due to the instructor? Do you think it's due to the individual and what they want from it? Because, forgive my kind of ignorance on the subject. I've not really studied much of it, but you have images of kind of the older generation doing it in terms of health and in terms of longevity and movement
Mm,
and things like that. But it's not particularly seen as a dynamic sport when you compare it to things like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, kickboxing, MMA, things like that in terms of the martial side. I think it's more seen in terms of the arts rather than the martial. And obviously, from someone that studied it to a very high level, you're probably one of the best people to speak to on this subject in terms of what its proper, true intentions are.
mm. Yeah, it's a broad church, and every part of that broad church is actually good.
Hmm.
So we will run courses for old age pensioners on how not to fall over,
Yeah.
how to not get Alzheimer's or dementia soon. I, I think when you look at any martial art, you're really looking at the three treasures as such of any martial art. The first one is health, and in health I would include mental health, emotional health, physical health, which fitness is a part of, but it's only a part of overall health.
Yeah.
And I think that most traditional martial arts would put health first, because what's the thing that's most likely to kill you? Your own health.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, that's the thing that you've got to look after more than anything else. So health is a very important part. The second part is skill, and from mobility, movement, balance, coordination, for any of life skills, apart from being able to fight as well. Increasing your skill level is very important. So when you look at a lot of the traditional forms and kata and so on, they don't seem to make sense from a self-defense point of view, but actually, when you break it down, what they're doing is improving your skill level. You jump up, you go down, you go left, you go right, you do a long turn, you do a short turn. So it's increasing your balance, mobility, and physical skills. And then the last thing is the application for self-defense, and that's like unraveling a knot, really, because self-defense skills are quite simple. They're not difficult. They're not complex. But the biggest part of self-defense is your own mind and your own character. So, yeah, when it comes to self-defense, venom is number one. Number two is power, and number three is skill. Luckily, Tai Chi focuses on all of those. So, the techniques in Tai Chi. I was going to do a television program with Dave Courtney.
Right.
We come from the same roots, I remember Dave was saying to me, he said, "Karate's this and Tai Chi's this," and I was kind of like, "No, Dave, it's not." And he said, "Well, how would you explain it?" And I said, "Well, if you think of a stone flying off of a spinning car wheel, if you're doing karate, the wheel would be your body and the stone would be your fist or your foot." I said, if it's Tai Chi, the stone is the opponent.
Mm-hmm.
If you can get that. And Dave at the time said, "No, I don't get that at all, Steve." And he said, "How can you show it?" And I said, "Well, I used to do it with this stupid no-inch punch thing because it was the fact that your hand didn't move to the body." It's an old thing now. It was big in the 70s. I had some great laughs with it. But it's just a little trick, really. But it's a nice way to show how you can put energy out and he would be the stone flying off the car wheel. And he was quite shot. He flew back across my office, went over the massage couch, with his feet sticking up in the air. I thought, bloody hell, I've killed Dave Courtney. But, I looked over the top and he was like, "Oh, that was good, Steve."
Yeah.
And he was good about it. His girlfriend at the time filmed that, actually. I've never seen it.
I was going to say, have you still got the footage?
But I think, no, but I think that kind of shows really, if you understand your art and how you understand it. If somebody does Tai Chi for health, brilliant. I've got no objections to that. If they're just doing it for, here the old people will swap knitting patterns and go to coffee together,
Yeah.
but the fact that if they're in their 80s, the balance and mind and the social aspect to
Yeah.
it's all quite important. If
Yeah.
someone is if someone's got a mystical, spiritual kind of mind and they want some, I don't know, I don't understand it, but if they want those aspects from it, good luck to them. As long as they're happy, I don't see it. Doesn't bother me at all. I'm lucky in that I've taught so many people,
Mm.
and as you know, you know quite a few of the people that I've taught, very senior grades in a lot of different martial arts right across the spectrum. And they all loved the self-defense aspect and said that the Tai Chi added a lot to their own arts.
Mm.
I'm quite happy with that.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk a little bit about them because you've got kind of, as you say, I think over 100 instructors now that have come from various different martial arts, and that, as you say,
Mm,
they're all kind of senior ranked in whatever it is.
yeah,
I'm going to look at Aaron Davis, for example, who we had on the other day, who's senior, lovely, lovely guy, good friend of mine, Aaron. But great in Kali, great in JKD, great in the Palantukan and Filipino stuff. And yet he sings your praises hugely every time that we meet
mm.
up. So what do you think it is? It's maybe a tricky question looking on the inside, but what do you think it is about you and how you teach and the way that you present your stuff that attracts so many people that are, high ranking and that are going to go, I need to learn from Steve Rowe. You've got a reputation, but obviously that's founded on something as well.
Yes. As I said to you earlier, I've got a very high IQ.
Mm.
So I can't see things in their normal, logical, linear way. If you give me a mass of information, as long as I don't think, I can put it all together in my head.
Yeah.
And it just comes out. I've never had to take notes. I've never had to have a PowerPoint presentation or something. I can do a 10-hour lecture just straight from the inside of my head. When I teach in layers, and I put it what I would consider to be in the right order. So they start with mindfulness, meditation, posture, breathing. So they connect their mind and their breath to their energy. They calm the body down, they calm the emotions down, they calm the mind down. I think if you don't do that first, whatever you do, you're going to be wasting your time because you can't run efficiently. From the meditation side of it, we move on to the standing postures, which a lot of people don't really understand. But the standing postures then take that energy that you've managed to connect with and move with your breath. And the thing to do with internal energy, a lot of people go on about chi being this and being that. Actually, when you look at chi, the calligraphy is breath coming out of the mouth
Hmm.
originally, and then they added a rice cooking pot to it as well. So basically, chi comes from breathing, food, movement. It's the energy you've got in your body. I would call it the animation. It's what animates your body. If you haven't got chi, you're dead. If you're
Right.
alive, you've definitely got some, but you can make it work and function better. So we start, if your mind is clear, if your breathing's good, if your posture's good, and if you're sensitive enough. Your mind's got to be aware, focused, sensitive, and intense. If it is, you can connect to your internal energy, you can stimulate it, you can store it, you can release it. So when they get to the standing, they understand the yin and yang. So we use deliberate postures that influence the yin and yang. And the thing that I do is if they have to have a direct experience of it. So there's nothing that I say that they can't directly experience. So from the meditation to experiencing the, the way that you color your energy with your emotions and mind. So if you're standing in a yin posture, you're going to focus on patience, kindness, tolerance, compassion. When you're standing in yang postures, it's determination, power, and so on. So you color your energy by using your emotions, but by standing still, and good posture, good breathing, you can experience the energy and learn how to color it. And then when you move into the Qi Kung exercise, Qi Kung, Qi work, um, you move the body in such a way that you develop what they call the genes. So you can use your posture, your breath, your mind, your emotions, and you can stimulate into a movement and store the energy. And almost like sneezing, you can release it.
Right.
So yeah, so you learn in the qigong exercises, you learn to stimulate, store, and release. So like you would say, sink, swallow, float, and spit. You learn how to sink, swallow, float to create that lightness, that vacuum, and then the fajin at the end of it is the spit where you let it out. And then you take that into the form. So I think in answer to your question, I put it into layers and
Mm.
layers that they can understand, layers that they can directly experience. And every single one of them will say, this is really helping my karate, Wing Chun, whatever it is, Kali, and so on. This really helps because I'm learning how to be better balanced, have better mobility, better routing. I'm learning, how to use my mind and my emotions to be able to make my training better. As Bruce Lee said, don't think, feel.
Yeah, 100%. It's obvious speaking to you that kind of the spiritual side of it, the Buddhism, the Taoism, the meditation, etc., is a huge part of also what you teach in terms of the physical, and it all links in together. So after kind of
Mm.
50 years of studying Buddhism, Taoism, meditation, what kind of insights do you think that you've gained from that experience and from those teachings, and
Mm.
what can you kind of translate across?
Well, I think that Buddhism is not a religion,
Mm.
firstly. It's a self diagnosis and medicine. So really what you do is, as we were doing in the meditation and the standing and the exercises, you learn to turn all your senses inwards and examine yourself. And in that, you learn how to talk to your body. I mean, your body talks to you all the time. It's just that we never listen. If you think about it, if you've got a dog, you talk to your dog, or your dog talks to you, and you
Yeah.
always understand what your dog wants and what it means. Your body talks to you in the same way. It doesn't use words, but it's sending you messages all of the time. So, and it's the same from your emotions and your mind. So, by calming your body, you can hear it. By calming your emotions, you can hear those. By calming your mind, it will speak back to you. And your thinking mind is like, I suppose, like the software of your body. It's like this stupid app we're trying to use that never works.
Yeah.
Your thinking mind is exactly the same. It's pretty stupid. It works to a limited extent, but that's all. But you've got that deeper mind, the wordless mind, that sits behind it. If you close all the screens on the computer, it's not dead. There's still a blank screen there behind it. And if you study Buddhism, the first stage of is mindfulness. It's samadhi. It's absorption. So if you sit still and you let your body calm down, your breathing calms down, your emotions calm down, and your mind calms down. That's a process. It takes all of us different lengths of time or whatever. But if you stick with it, it definitely works for everyone. Once you're calm and kind of clear in mind, emotions, and so on, you reach a stage of what we'd call absorption, where you start off your mind's going like one of them heart machines, blip 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 blip.
Yeah.
What's this? What's that? What am I doing? I'm useless at this. I'm shit. I'm this. Whatever, And but it will slow down because you're sitting still and you're breathing deep. So you can't help it. Your body will start to calm everything down. And in the end, it'll kind of go blip, blip, and then it'll finally go beep. And that's called absorption, right? And when you reach that stage, it's like what's behind all the windows on your computer comes to the front. In Buddhism, they would call it your insight or wisdom mind.
Okay.
So the things in life that are intrinsic, you can't tell me what insight is. You can only tell me examples of what it does. You can't tell me what wisdom is. You can only tell me examples of what happens with a wise person.
Hmm.
So things like insight and wisdom are beyond words, they're beyond thought, they're beyond definition. They come from the infinite mind or your conscious self, if you like. And being able to access that, it means that you change the locus of power from outside of your body, where generally speaking, you want to be young, you want to be sexy, you want a six pack, you want to impress other people, blah, 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 blah. All the shit that everybody else is shoveling you all the time. You
Yeah.
can actually change that so you can look inside of yourself and your locus of power will move from outside to inside. And that's the point where you can critically look at everything and assess it. You've kind of set up a watcher in your mind that will look at and work out, is this who I am? This is what happened to me in my 20s, in the 70s. When I
Hmm.
started to study Buddhism and I went through this process, it was like, wow, I never knew who I was. And at that point, I went from being a South London street thug to vegetarian, hippie, whatever it was, but certainly grew far more insightful. I could rely on my gut feelings, which I've
Mm.
kind of relied on ever since. I've walked the left, if you look at my martial arts background, I've always walked the left-hand path. I've never gone with the crowd.
Yeah.
And I've always relied totally and completely on my own instincts. Is this right or is this wrong? And I think that's what a martial artist wants to develop. That's what I want my students to develop. If someone said to me, what do you want your black belts to be like? My answer is self-empowered. I
Yeah.
want them to be powerful and to be able to look at and judge and think for themselves. So I
That
think
makes.
that's what it's given me, you know.
How much does intelligence come into? You've obviously said that you've got a high IQ. How much do you think emotional intelligence and kind of cognitive intelligence as well links in with the Buddhism side of it, links in with the spirituality side of it? Because what you're saying is another level almost, and it's deep, yeah. And you think of martial arts in terms of the physical a lot, but you don't necessarily go into it as much as you're saying in terms of the layers of this, and in terms of your internal monologue, your channeling, your how you're speaking about yourself, your thoughts and feelings on the
Mm.
on the world internally and externally. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are in terms of like emotional intelligence and kind of, as I say, the cognitive intelligence and that self-awareness of being able to do that as well.
Well, these are the things that you really want to work on. You know, they are the most important. A lot of people are academically intelligent.
Hmm.
I can't stand them. They really get on my nerves because they're locked in their thinking mind, and they'll come
Yeah.
back with all this science and long words and long.
Book
I
smart,
can't
people
do that.
stupid.
So yeah, I mean, I've written I've written 10 books actually, but five in the last few years. But I think that I think you need to be simple. And I've one of the things that Taoism has given me really is that basic simplicity. I'm always looking for the bottom line. You know, even when somebody's talking to me, my mind's going, and and I often end up saying, "So what are you trying to say? What's the
Yeah.
bottom line?" You know.
Yeah.
And if someone's throwing a load of science at me to do with martial arts, my question is, how useful is that to me? How's that going to improve my martial arts? Or are you just spouting shit? For scientists, but not for me, you know? Yeah. So I think, yeah, they are very important. To have cognition,
Hmm.
in the first place, your mind has got to be aware, focused, sensitive, and intense. You know, so you can look at awareness is like a light, you know, but a light can be bright and shine everywhere. So you need to focus that aware mind and kind of make a torch beam so that you can, put it to something and put it to good use. Sensitivity is important to yourself first, and then to your environment and other people, and particularly in touch. And in martial arts, that first touch, you know, the reason that Tai Chi was called deceptive boxing and soft cotton boxing was because you meet the opponent with Nei Jin or internal Jin. Uh, Put into my South London street language, it's suck, don't blow.
Yeah.
So when you receive the opponent, you know you're sucking them in. You're not trying to
Yeah.
push them out or away. Um,
Sure.
so yeah, so I think that you can't have the others without developing the mind in that way first. But you
Hmm.
need a discriminative mind. You know, you need to be able to filter what's coming in, to be able to use this beautiful mind that you've started to develop. Is something that you've got to be able to filter everything that comes through. Um, and you've got to be able to rely on your gut instinct, you know, because so many people try to bullshit you.
True. Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
And in terms of fighting,
Yeah.
in terms of fighting, you must have the ability to spontaneously, skillfully react to whatever somebody else throws. If you try and think in techniques, you lose. You know,
Yeah.
so really, your mind's got to be in that absorption state where you're kind of, in my mind, I'm going, just give me some hit, anything, whatever you do, you'll do. And if you ever watch me demonstrate, I never ask somebody. When they kind of stop or they're confused, I always say, just throw something, anything, because that's how I function. You know,
Yeah.
I can't function by going, you do this and I'll do this. I can only function with you giving me something first, and then I can
Mm.
do whatever it is that I do. Whenever I did demonstrations or whatever, even with knives and blades and so on, it was always just try and stab me, you know, because if I can't deal with that, what kind of martial artist am I?
100%. Yeah.
Mm.
When did you know then that you wanted to pursue martial arts full time? I think you said that you started your first academy in '83 full time. Was that correct? And that's way, way,
Yeah,
way behind kind of
I,
the time when
yeah.
it was the done thing, I suppose, to do full-time martial arts.
I actually started it in 1976,
Right.
but I was still working in the security trade at the time.
Okay.
Um, but I left the security trade in '83 and went absolutely full time.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I'd been working. I don't know, I can't remember. I was about a second Dan in karate or something at the time, and I'd got to the point where I've been studying Buddhism, Taoism, training hard, and the security job that I was in, being an operations manager, I had to take a lot of clients out for lunch. You had to wine and dine and then go back and smoke cigars with them and all that kind of shit. I couldn't do that. I mean, I was
Mhm.
vegetarian,
Yeah.
didn't smoke, didn't drink, only trained. I felt so out of place, and it was kind of embarrassing. And the kind of people that I was mixing with, I couldn't get on with.
Right.
So I kind of reached a stage. I went to the general manager at the time and I said to him, look, can I go part time? Um, Actually, quite a bit of my job could be done with someone at less pay. I was quite highly paid. I had a nice car and everything. And I said to them, so can I go part time? And they were all over that. Oh, great, save money and so on. So I went on to a three-day week. But
Okay.
what they realised then was all the other stuff that I did. I was their expert in so many areas that whenever they wanted to get me, they couldn't because I wasn't there. So they
Sure.
called me back in and they basically said, "This is no good, Steve. You're going to have to go back on full time." And I said, "No."
Hmm.
And they said, "Well, you've got to do it or else we'll sack you." And I said, "I'll leave." And that's sort of because I was their expert in employment law as well. So they were then worried that I would take them to a tribunal and where this thing where they kept calling me back in and going, we'll give you more money, we'll give you a bigger car, you can have your 3-day week, whatever. But I knew that in the end they'd then be scheming to get rid of me anyway. So at that point, I just stopped and I said, look, I'm not going to see you, I'm not going to take you to the tribunal, I'm leaving. And that was when I left to make money up at the time. Like I said, I did endless self-defense type work. I did a lot of private lessons in everything from self-defense to martial arts, as well as running the club. Of course, in those days, we put a tin in the corner of the club and everyone put 50p in the tin, and that was it, kind
Sure.
of thing. So it wasn't something you could make a real living out of,
Mm.
but we
What's
managed.
what's the area that you've most enjoyed teaching then over your kind of 50 years? Are you enjoying teaching more now? Or did
Mm.
you enjoy teaching more when you were kind of a younger man, teaching more of the physical side? Is it just a different stage of your life? And what's your focus now for your own training, I suppose, and your own development?
Yeah, I think that each stage of your life has got its own value, isn't it? The, I'm ashamed of some of the things I've done, but I've enjoyed others. And I think that going through the fighting side, the self defense side, having done the karate, the aido, judo, jiu-jitsu, wing chun, all the different martial arts that I've done over the years have all contributed to who I am, which I think helps the way that I teach now, because most of the guys who come into the club, I kind of know their art, I know what they've done, so I
Sure.
can put mine across to suit them. Um, One of the things that struck me actually, I saw the interview you did with Aaron, and
Yeah.
Aaron said that I did the no-inch punch and held him physically with one hand or something. And I thought to myself at the time, I wish you'd said, the thing about Steve Rowe is that he still trains twice a day, every day, and he's still improving. I'm 75 in a couple of weeks,
Hmm.
and my medical history. I think most people do. I had 25 surgeries, 3 life-threatening sepsis attacks, had my leg amputated, cancer. Um, But I think that the thing that I've got to contribute is that despite all of my challenges, I still train twice a day, every day. And I don't just train, I improve.
Yeah.
I'm better this week than I was last week. And any of the students, that are on the courses will tell you the same thing. When I demonstrate to them, you can see what 50 years of training has done for me. I'm not someone who's done 3 years and repeated 3 years 10 times,
Yeah.
which is, for quite a few people. I'm still improving all of the time. So whatever challenges or physical challenges you've got, age, illness, and so on, I'm on antibiotics at the moment for an infection in my leg, and even coming down here, I felt dizzy and so on. But your training tells you to do what you do.
Mm.
And so despite sitting in the corner of the dojo with one leg chopped off, having sort of beat prostate cancer and endless sepsis infections, which infections are still a trouble that I get.
Yeah.
But basically, my spine, the heart of your body, it's not your heart, it's your spine, your core, and your vagus nerve, because
Mhm.
everything in your body comes from those three. So the most important thing for your health is to have mobility in the spine, and mobility in the spine has to come from when I say core, I mean the deep front line. The one that goes from your ears down to the arches of your feet, not just round your waist. But your core manipulates your spine, and the vagus nerve runs through the core and feeds the neural system out through the body. So we focus very much on the spine, the core, and the vagus nerve for a vibrant health. And of course, the neural system, the blood supply to your brain, everything comes through the spine anyway. So at 75, with all the problems I've had, I've still got a lot of vitality.
Yeah.
I've still got mental acumen, and I'm able to train, teach, layer things out. I wrote 4 books in a year.
Yeah.
So I've still got enough energy to expend to be able to do all of those things. So I think that's what it's done for me. And I think most people that come to train with me come to learn that, because obviously otherwise you've got a very limited shelf life
Sure.
in just physical fitness. And I think they'll all say the extra benefit they get is on the self defense side as well. But self defense is a part of health.
Well,
That's what
yeah.
health is, isn't it?
Defense of
Self
self.
defense of the mind, emotions, and body. Yeah.
Yeah. What keeps you going now? What keeps you like driving forward as much as you do? Teaching all these people that high ranking martial arts themselves. You said you wrote 4 books in a year. What's that drive for you now?
Um, I forgot to stop. I think
Okay.
the thing is that when I think a scientific study on happiness found that it wasn't about money, love, sex, or anything like that. It was about having meaning and purpose in what you do.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. I've still got a lot to offer. No one really gets me fully yet. I mean, I don't know whether I'm going to die tomorrow, next week, or 10 years, or whatever. I don't know. But while I'm here, while I'm inhabiting this knackered old meat carcass, I feel that I've still got something. I've got a meaning and purpose in what I'm doing, because nobody else can teach what I'm teaching. So while I'm here, it's fairly unique. Not what I'm teaching, but how I teach it, I think.
How you take it across. Perfect.
Yeah,
What we've kind of mentioned, we've touched on like the surgeries and the life threatening sepsis and the amputation and things like that. How has your teaching been affected by all of these kind of health concerns? And because obviously losing your leg is a huge thing for anyone, yet your way
yeah.
of speaking about it is almost kind of just like, okay, like it's happened, let's go, let's move on, right, we're on to the next thing. And
Mm,
it's a very stoic way of thinking about it, and it's to be applauded, I think, the way that you keep going 100%. But yeah,
mm,
how have you changed as a person, do you think, as a result of this? And have
yeah.
you changed as a teacher as a result of this?
Yeah, I think it would be fair enough to say that when I was young, I was an an enormous see you next Tuesday. Um,
Okay.
really was, you know.
Yeah.
And I think as I've, through my training and studies, but also through the challenges that I've met in life, I've become much less so. So the bigger the challenges, the more you grow. In a way, I feel sorry for people that have an easy life because they never really learn that much. They never really grow that much.
Mm.
So I think that having these challenges, it's the way that you meet them. And people go, oh, you know, you must be a hero or whatever. Of course, that's not true because I didn't ask to have my leg chopped off. I didn't volunteer. It wasn't like going to climb a mountain or something.
Mm.
Um, they came along anyway. All of my problems, my health problems, started when I had my knees replaced in 2007.
Right.
Right, and I had both done at the same time. They don't do that now, but I had it done then. But when I got home, I fell over. And when I fell over, I fell down onto my knees and backwards. And what I didn't realize is that when they replaced your knees, they cut the quadriceps muscles and sewed them back. So on both legs, three of the quad muscles on each leg severed and went back up into the groin.
Mm.
Um, I didn't, obviously, I didn't know this. I was in terrible pain and so on. But I kept going back to the consultant and saying something's wrong. I fell over and something's definitely. And he kept saying, "Oh, you've had both knees done at the same time. What's the matter with you? We'll send you for more physio." And so on. And I kept going back, and no one ever checked. And it wasn't. And that was in 2007, and it wasn't until 2012 that I went to see a different consultant. Yeah, 5 years later, and he took one look at my legs and he said, "You haven't got any quads. How the hell are you even standing up?" And I said, "I've got good balance from doing martial arts. I can stand on one leg. Look." And he was going, "Whoa, whoa, whoa." And he said, 5 years, I don't know what we can do. He said, "But I'll send you to a specialist in London and see if they can do anything." So I went to see the specialist and he said, "We've never done it before." He said, "But if you want," he said, "they're big surgeries, 5 hours each leg." He said, "But I'll pull the muscles back down and stitch them up again and we'll see if we can get them working." Being a martial artist, oh yeah, pain's no problem. Yeah, okay, yeah, I'll go for that. The first leg, um, well, both legs, the muscles just snapped back up again. They were dead. I mean, it was stupid to even try, to be honest. But that was my first dose of sepsis, and they had to take out a knee replacement, put another one in. By 2015, I was coming back from Czech, and I collapsed at the airport. Really bad sepsis. I couldn't even get in a car or the ambulance. It took them 2 hours to get me into the ambulance because my heart kept stopping and so on. I went to the NHS hospital and they tried several surgeries. They were just killing me. Luckily, I had private insurance and I phoned up my consultant that had seen what had happened. And he'd just got back from India, I think. And actually, he said, you know, come up and we'll see what we can do. And I was due to have another surgery that day, but I knew they were going to kill me. I knew that I was never going to last this surgery. So I ripped all my things out. And actually, Will Henshaw,
Mm-hmm.
I phoned him up and I said, "Can you come and get me?" Because he had the bag. And Will, great guy, great guy. Will came down, picked me up. There was, I don't know, the M25 was closed. We had endless problems getting to the hospital. But bless Will, you know, I pulled all my tubes out, discharged myself from the hospital, was sitting outside in a wheelchair. Will got me into the back of his van and took me up to the other hospital. I was in the private hospital for 5 months, loads of surgeries, and in the end, they fused my right leg completely. And I had that done without being put out, without that kind of anaesthetic. I just had the spinal one. So I actually watched them chop my leg in half and drill it out and put a steel bar through upper and lower. And yeah, and luckily I survived that. I think the private surgeon called in the family and said chances of him surviving this are virtually nil. You know, the sepsis is really bad. You've got to expect the worst. I don't know, somehow I survived. But then just surgery after surgery, and then another sepsis attack, and the bar that they put in the leg in the end broke through the shin bone, and that all got infected, and that was why I had to have my leg amputated. I don't like to talk about it too much; it's gory. But that was, you know, but my point is,
Part
the
of your story,
problems
though,
go.
Steve. So yeah.
Yeah, but my problems go back to the original surgeon that ignored it. We went to court. There was £1 million court case, um, but I lost, and I lost because they didn't want to set a precedent, and
Right.
there's nothing I could do about it. Even, everyone admitted that I was right and the consultant was wrong, but they didn't want to set a precedent. And because it had never happened before, it was unique. They accepted that he didn't have to notice that that's what had happened. But a simple X-ray would have done the job. Well, actually, not an X-ray, the scan thing. That they, if he'd done that, he would have seen that there's no muscles in the leg.
Scary.
So there you go. So yeah, there's a lot of challenges. It most definitely humbled me
Hmm.
because people that have got problems and pain and suffering and whatever, I've been there myself, and I think a lot of the people that I talk to, even on Facebook Messenger, I get several messages a week from people that have got problems, health problems to marital problems of all different kinds, but they'll all message me because they think I'm someone that can help them, but which is nice. I actually don't mind that.
Amazing. What's in the future for Steve then? What's your plans for the next year, the next 2 years, the next 5 years? What would you like to kind of accomplish?
Leave my body behind, I think. Bloody hurts too much. and to be honest, I'm in the winter of my life. I get lots of offers of things that I can't do. I can't really travel abroad anymore. It's very difficult for me, being in a wheelchair, even to go and do seminars and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm quite happy. I have seminars here every Sunday of the year.
Yeah.
So my coaching program, if you can imagine, it's been running since 2018. So I've got the 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. I've got 8 years worth of students still training on
Yeah.
those programs, and they occupy every single Sunday. So I'm busy enough.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've got the full-time centre. I don't have much to do with the classes nowadays, but Mikey, my son-in-law, runs those and does an excellent job. And my daughter deals with all the admin stuff. So I'm fairly free, but I'm happy with a relaxed, kind of semi-retired lifestyle, really.
Yeah.
So I don't want to try and travel. I probably could get on a plane and go somewhere, but I can't. I've done it. I've been there. I've done that.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's nothing to, and going around on a wheelchair in somewhere, no, another country, I can't see the fun in that.
No. Fair
So
enough.
yeah, to be honest, I'm happy as I am. I do
Well,
get a lot of people will message me and say, "I'll come down and see you. Can I visit you?" Blah blah blah. And I normally put them off
yeah.
because there's not a lot of point.
Well, fair enough.
Someone sent me a message the other day. How much would you charge for a half-hour private lesson? It's like, there's, if you're not going to come back and train with me on a regular basis, what's the point? I think every person that I give private lessons to has trained with me for 30 years plus.
Right. Okay.
I don't think I've got any private students that have trained with me for less than that. And that actually fills up my time, fills up
Yeah.
my calendar.
Yeah. Any more books in the pipeline?
I keep saying no. every,
but
every every book I write, I always go, that's it, I'm not going to write another one. Um, the publishers, RAM Publishing, are quite naughty, really, because they go, oh, you could do a book about this, or you could do a book about that. But I think I've done enough. You know, 5 books, I think, with them is enough. I think it's 4 with them and one that I self-published a while before that. But I think on Amazon there's 6 of my books still.
perfect. Yeah.
And to Yeah, and to be honest, I don't read books myself. You know, I always feel that you reach a point. I used to read a lot of books way back in the 70s and 80s, maybe into the 90s. But in the end, you're just reading the same thing in different words. And
Yeah.
like I say, I meditate several times a day. Um, I'm not like a person who's going to go, well, actually, I do a little bit of that as well, but um, I'm not a kind of hippie style meditator. I just sit and meditate. I meditate in my training. I meditate before I go to bed. I meditate in bed. I'm learning the Tao Te Ching off by heart as a mental exercise.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously, as you get older, you need to keep using your mind as well. And I'm finding that I'm gaining a lot of depth by keep repeating it to myself. You
Yeah.
think you understand something, but the more that you recite it to yourself, the kind of deeper and deeper it
Another
goes.
layer.
So I'm actually quite enjoying that. Mm.
Perfect. Well,
So
Steve,
no more books.
thank you. It's been enlightening. Obviously, you are, as I said at the start, such a well-known figure in the martial arts and someone that's very highly
Mm.
respected for good reason. So thank you for giving me, the hour of your time when Riverside eventually decides to play ball and we get chatting. I really, really appreciate it. It's a really interesting story that obviously you've got. And yeah, your kind of perspective on martial arts and spirituality and things like that. And also, it's just, yeah, it's really interesting to hear your story and chat properly. So thank you, Steve.
No, you're welcome.